On the 2nd of April 2025, the White House announced a baseline 10% tariff on all US imports with room for higher reciprocal rates for countries with large US trade deficits. Through the summer, the administration escalated that approach against Bharat, first raising duties and then on the 27th of August doubling that to a 50% tariff on most Bharatiya goods, pitched as punishment for Bharat's continued purchase of discounted Russian oil. The move largely targets labor-intensive Indian exports like textiles, gems, jewelry and seafood. New Delhi has condemned the action as unjustified. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has publicly urged consumers to buy India-made and signalled that Bharat will not bow to pressure on energy security. How exposed is Bharat then? The United States is Bharat's largest goods export market. In 2024, US goods imports from Bharat totaled about $87.3 billion. Total two-way goods trade is about $128.9 billion. Layering a 50% tariff across most Bharatiya imports thus threatens tens of billions in trade flows and squeezes margins for Bharat's most employment-intensive sector. Macroeconomic impact? Well, the analysts expect a slowing of India's GDP growth and sharp hits to export-led clusters. Early estimates point to growth dipping below prior trajectories if the tariff persists. Textiles and apparel alone employ millions. A 50% price shock at the US border risks order diversion to Vietnam, Bangladesh and Mexico. Bharat's role in midstream processing like cut and polished diamonds, specialty steel inputs and seafood processing faces trade diversion towards alternative hubs with lower US barriers. Bharat's policy playbook now will have to evolve. While New Delhi has condemned the tariff strike and reiterated its energy security prerogatives like continued Russian crude purchases under the G7 price cap regime and emphasized domestic demand resilience, Bharat has also retaliated in the past. In 2019, Bharat levied duties on 28 US items like almonds, apples and walnuts. Bharat lifted many of those duties in 2023 during a reset with Washington. But a calibrated replay, selective and consumer impact driven, still remains available. Bharat can bring a WTO case where panel proceedings can still create pressure and deliver legitimacy. Meanwhile, US importers are already challenging the tariffs in American courts, another lever that could change the calculus. Bharat can push for product-specific exclusions on job-intensive categories and pair that strategy with US buyers to document harms to supply chains. This was a key tactic in earlier US tariff rounds. Bharat can accelerate market access similar to the free trade agreement with the United Kingdom, creating such deals with other nations that can be helpful to offset the US exposure. Bharat can also tweak its corporate strategy by encouraging US side assembly and investment by Bharatiya firms to circumvent border tariffs. Why tariffs are counterproductive for the United States, that is also important to understand. Tariffs are taxes on domestic buyers. Past tariff waves show that costs are almost entirely borne by US importers and consumers with limited foreign price compression, raising household budgets and eroding competitiveness. Experts consistently find higher prices, welfare losses, and trade diversion as the dominant effects of tariffs. There's no reason to expect a different outcome this time around. Across the board, tariff regimes raise input costs, and that's true for US manufacturers and retailers. They mess with the supply chain planning and feed inflation in tradables. Moreover, penalizing a strategic partner over oil sourcing risks pushing Bharat to hedge harder with other energy and security partners without materially denting global Russian flows. Additionally, diverted US demand shifts to Vietnam, Mexico, not to US plants, diluting the intended reshoring benefits. What is the American hypocrisy net-net? Washington frames the move as cutting funds to Moscow. But price cap coalition countries, including the United States, have imported billions of euros of refined products likely derived from Russian crude, exploiting a well-documented refining loophole. In parallel, China's massive purchases of Russian crude have not triggered a symmetric US tariff shock, underscoring the selectivity of the action against Bharat. That inconsistency fuels Bharat's criticism of double standards. So, what's the bottom line? A 50% US tariff on most Bharatiya goods is a blunt, high leverage shock that will hurt Bharatiya exporters and strain bilateral trust. But it also raises costs for US consumers and firms, diverts trade to third countries, and undermines the long run strategic alignment with a pivotal Indo Pacific partner. Bharat's most effective response combines measured retaliation, hard-nosed legal and diplomatic work, and faster market diversification to other economic zones, while backstopping jobs at home with export credit, marketing support, and investment facilitation. Bharat has a multi-pronged strategy at play aimed at Swadeshi-driven self-sufficiency and an India-first doctrine.
Been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.